Okay, well, welcome to this podcast, and I'm here with Joe Bonington, and I've actually been quite excited about doing this podcast because I met Joe, I think it was 6 years ago now, but I was getting ready to do my big adventure, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, which I've done a couple of podcasts on, and I was referred to Joe because Joe runs a business called Joe's Base Camp, and the focus there is to help people who are preparing for adventures like that to do the right level of preparation. And one of the things that stopped me short when I was preparing for Kilimanjaro was just reading a book that I had. It was called Life at the Extremes, but it was the very first page was talking about three people, or it was a person who tried to climb Kilimanjaro in 3 days and basically died. So my approach was, well, I'd really like to not die, so I'll listen to what Joe has to say. So it's good to be on the podcast with you, Joe.
Oh, thanks, and thanks for the intro. I mean,
it's loaded.
At the end of the day, all I do is, or I like to think of it as getting people physically and mentally fit enough to have an awesome adventure and get home safely.
Yeah.
I think people tend to think about it's just as long as if I can get there, if I can just get there, and they forget we want them to come home again.
Exactly, and we were talking a little bit before we started recording about being able to enjoy it. So Joe's based in Sydney, and Joe also you've had quite a lot of adventures yourself, and that's something that we'll talk about. So just to start with, you want to talk a bit about Joe's Base Camp and maybe some of the people who have gone through it, some of their achievements, and also things that stand out for you. It's been open.
Yeah. Okay. So Joe's Base Camp is an online program. It used to be a physical bricks and mortar gym, which is where we met. But now I've actually transitioned to being purely online, and that's great. So I've now I'm not hemmed in geographically, and I've got clients in the UK, I've got clients in New Zealand, I've got clients in every state in Australia, and my main focus is adventure-based activities. So my background is as a strength and endurance coach, and my passions are anything that are basically anything big and gnarly. Mm. So at the very top end of my client base, I look after some fairly extreme endurance athletes. So two of my guys, Dr. Gareth Andrews and Dr. Richard Stevenson, they just did the largest ever attempted crossing of the Antarctic. Wow. And they didn't actually manage to do what they'd originally planned to do, and their adventure, their aim was so big, they still actually managed to get a world first out of it anyway.
Oh, wow.
Even though they'd actually had to cut it short at the South Pole. So they're at the extreme end, and then also, I've had people summiting Everest. I've had about 8 people come to me because they wanted to summit Everest. I've got, but then my bread and butter really they're people like you. They're people who, a lot of people going to altitude for the first time. People come to me because there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people don't know who to turn to, and sometimes I think they feel that they don't want to talk to friends and relatives about fears about altitude and stuff like that because they don't want to worry them, etc. And so I'm a good port of call because ours it's not just about the physical training. So whatever adventure you're in, I'm all about the process that gets you there as well. So it's any help that you need in your planning, looking at your levels of skills and abilities, and that's both physical skills, i.e., are you physically fit enough to do the thing it is that you're wanting to do? Mm-hmm. Technical skills, do you have the technical skills to do the things that you want to do? how much time do you need to get those skills, both the physical skills and the technical skills? And so I have this 9-step process, and we put it all in that. We assess people, and then we put them through their program. And so that's really the process of it, and it's it's good. I love it. And now, of course, as well, I'm now that I'm online, the modern day coach isn't just a coach. They've now suddenly become a content creator.
Yeah.
So I'm now surrounded by mirrorless cameras, and I've actually just gone and done. So I also lead commercial treks, and or I was leading commercial treks, but I've actually just come back from doing my first trek as a content creator, where I didn't take any clients with me, and we went purely me and a mate to have a romp around, and for me to create content to show that I'm walking the walk, etc.
Yeah.
Which is one thing that actually, when I had a bricks and mortar gym, it unfortunately was running a team of 10 people and having members there every day and all that kind of stuff. It was actually taking me away from living an authentic life of adventure.
Yeah.
Whereas now with this whole digital world, it's funny. I posted a picture of my office in a small village called Samar, which is about 3,500 meters, and in a tea house, and with my laptop there and my little Rode Micro Go microphone and my camera and my gimbal and and all of that, and it was quite funny, but it was a great trip.
It sounds like you're really enjoying that, getting back to doing that.
Oh, I am. I'm absolutely loving it. Partly because of COVID and some other things. Shutting down the gym and all of that side of stuff. It's been a good couple of years since I've been able to get into the mountains, and it's the mountains and the high places that are really my passion.
Right.
I did go on a sailing adventure. I'm not a sailor. I actually went on that basically to prove to myself, and that is that to get myself out of my own comfort zone. I feel very comfortable in the high passes. I feel comfortable at altitude. I feel comfortable in those environments.
Yeah.
But being on a boat offshore for 14 days, being buffeted around by wind and all of that is way out of my comfort zone. And so I went and did it. So that was my and that was probably, for me, in many ways, was a true adventure because it was so out of my comfort zone, and it was great, and it made me realise how much I love the mountains.
Yeah, absolutely. But you're right; it's good to do that. Try something different because you never know. Sometimes you did know, it turns out, but other times you didn't.
Yeah, totally. But no, so I've just come back from the Mustang region of Nepal, the Kingdom of Mustang, and up on the Chinese border, and that was it was a fantastic trip. It's more, you don't actually go very high or high by my standards. I think the highest point was 4,000 meters, 4,150 meters, but it's a very cultural trip.
Yeah,
and also seeing, for me, it was actually seeing. I'm very heavily involved with the Australian Himalayan Foundation as well, so I've got a lot of connection with Nepal, and I wanted to see how things are being affected by things like the Belts and Roads project, the Chinese Belts and Roads project, and
tell me more about that, just for people who don't know the Belts and Road project.
Okay, the Belts and Roads project is it's a project set up by the Chinese, and the cynics would say it's to increase their sphere of influence. The same as giving large amounts of money to Pacific Islands and all of that kind of stuff, and building infrastructure in poor countries. And poor old Nepal, it has two superpowers. It's completely surrounded by two superpowers. It's got China on the north side, it's got India on the southern side, and both of them meddle. Both of them meddle in Nepal's policy because it's such a strategic barrier.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for Mustang, let me backtrack. Yeah. Mustang is a kingdom within Nepal. Until the insurrection 15 years ago, it actually had its own king. You had more kings in Nepal. So you had your major king, the king of all Nepal, but Mustang also had its own royal family. And he's no longer a king. So when the Maoists took over and took government, they banned all monarchies and rights of succession through bloodlines.
Right.
And so the royal family are now hoteliers.
Okay.
But they luckily, nothing bad happened to them in the insurrection. There wasn't any, bloodletting or anything like that.
Good.
But it is this kingdom, and until recently, you could only access, the only way to get to it was via hiking trails, through trekking trails.
Right.
And it was part of the original old Silk Roads. You had the road, it's the low point of the mountains, and it's where the Tibetan plateau comes down in, and it basically crosses there, and you've got the valley system there, which is called the Kaligandaki corridor, and so it's an obvious place. And you got to remember, it's closer there to cities in China than it is to Kathmandu.
Right.
And so there's always been trade. And before China took over Tibet, it was a very porous border. And most of the people in Mustang, it's all very, very strong Tibetan heritage.
Right.
All the buildings are all in Tibetan colors. They've all got the ochre and the terracotta, the three colors, and the ochre, the terracotta, and the grey and the white, and it's all like that. And so what the Chinese are doing with these Belt and Roads projects, they're giving them the Nepalese money to build all these roads. There's no environmental planning around them, and they do. It's hard when you talk to the locals. It's there. At the end of the day, it is improving things in the fact that they're getting access to better healthcare.
Yeah.
It's making food cheaper.
Yeah.
On the downside, though, up on the high plains, they all used to be horsemen. There was a really strong horse culture, and there's still a lot of horses up there. But the kids now don't want to learn to raise horses and keep the bloodlines like their parents did.
Yeah.
They look at they just want to buy a motorbike. Now they've got a road, and go to Kathmandu, where all the Westerners are, and work in a restaurant for real money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they'd rather do that, and that is tough.
Yeah.
The cynics would also say that with the Belts and Roads projects, it's meant to be all about commerce, and it's actually meant to enhance the commercial viability of areas and promote commerciality between through those areas. But what they're doing is, it's not just one road going into the major urban centres. There's now roads going off. They're like just sending a bloke off with a digger and saying, follow that contour line.
Okay.
And
yeah.
The cynic in me thinks that, well, a couple of things. That, it's a bit like council budgets. If we don't spend this year what we got given last year, we won't get as much next year. And because there's a lot of corruption, that probably means that people will end up having less going into their back pockets. So they want to keep as many roads going as possible. So there's roads going into places that really do not need roads.
Yeah.
And then also what's happening is they've, rather than put them, and there is the space because it's traditional glacial valleys, rather than put them on where the trekking trails are, they're laying some of the roads just directly over the traditional trails.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So a lot of the Westerners aren't wanting to go into certain areas now because they don't want to walk along a dusty road that now has lorries and jeeps and stuff on it.
Yeah.
But what it is in the area, it is promoting now is there's more local. Like there's an area there. There's a town there called Muktanath that is very holy. It's one of the 8 holy Hindu shrines in the world, the holiest Hindu shrines, and it's holy place for both Buddhists and for Hindus.
Yeah.
And so now loads and loads, because there's a road now. So it used to be a real hard, proper pilgrimage where you had to walk, a bit like the Camino Trail or something.
Yeah.
And but now everybody's coming up by bus, so they're not getting as many Westerners. So it used to be Westerners who wanted to walk but would spend big dollars.
Yeah.
Now they've got lots of local tourists and pilgrims, religious pilgrims, not spending as much money per person, but there's a lot more of them.
Yeah.
But that also has a lot more environmental impact than a few trekkers who
exactly. Yeah.
wouldn't drop any rubbish anywhere, or so it's really tough. And at the same time, I was, I've said this a few times, it's our Western arrogance that says, okay, well, no, you can't have roads because we don't want roads and dirty trucks and stuff like that because we want to come here and walk and take pretty pictures.
Exactly. This is exactly what I learned, I guess, when I was in Zimbabwe, that people that, because again, we have this Western view of, well, there's all these amazing animals and they should be protected. But the people who live there, they see how we live and they want the same. So I can quite understand a young guy wanting to just get a motorbike and belt down a new road rather than learn about horses because he's seen us do it. And it is that arrogance. And we do look at the pretty, the pitch perfect stuff, but the fact is the world is changing. It may not be changing the way we like, but it's definitely changing. And in some regard, if you want to connect with those traditional places, if you like, now's the time because they're not going to be around for a lot longer in many places.
I think they could be, but I think what we have to do, yes, they won't be around in the same way, and yes, there are going to be a lot more roads, but I think we can manage to change a lot better.
Yeah.
But that does mean having to take hard stances on corruption and things like that, and because that it's. I think with a lot of these things, it's where greed gets in the way.
Yeah.
And if people have got other motives, because also, with the Chinese belts and roads, I mean, look, it also, it makes a great commercial sense to do this as well. It also happens to be, you've all of a sudden got something that was an impassable barrier, now has a big wide road on it that you could easily fit a tank through. Strategically, it makes
exactly.
things easier. For one of these big, that can be sometimes aggressive superpower, and that's on the same on the other side. The Indians haven't been shy of destabilizing the countries around them and then sending in forces and occupying them. They're just as bad for it. But I think there is ways that we can preserve culture, preserve the environment or lessen the impact on the environment and still enable growth, development, better health care and all of these issues. If we could do that, places like Nepal won't go. At the moment, Nepal has a Maoist government in. which obviously is the Maoists are a fairly extreme version of communism. They're not. They're in a democracy, so it is a democratic country.
Yeah.
But they, if we can address these problems and address the issues that the Maoists have mainly kind of come from the West and from the poorer areas. It's like anywhere. If people don't get as angry and as agitated if they're being treated well and if they're not being ripped off by the powers above them, and and then they're more sensitive to things like poaching of snow leopards, and they'll see more long term rather than getting money to feed their family today. Which what they've proven in Africa and have done, with reasonable, in fact, great success in some areas where they've totally changed the culture and ended up having ex-poachers now vehement anti-poachers.
Yeah. I had the chance to speak to a couple of ex-poachers in Uganda, which was interesting, and corruption was a big part of what was driving them. But also in India with the tigers, I don't know if you've heard that one, but with Kana, what they did, they involved the local population in the reserves. So their guides, their drivers, they work in the hotels. So they've got a vested interest in, they become their tigers. And it's the same in Namibia with the group I'm supporting there with the elephants. The people have adopted the elephants. So I think when you get that local buy-in, as long as people are being looked after, and they, I think most people are the same, doesn't matter where you go. They just want to be able to eat, be with their families, do the normal stuff. And as long as they're able to do that, you don't have these problems.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We want security.
Yeah.
We want security for your family and all that. And you're right. And it's these projects, it's like with the snow leopards. They're doing things that are showing the locals as their industries change and as they're being affected by global warming, etc. They've now got explained to I don't think before that they didn't realise that these people who were wandering around and paying for things in American dollars, they want to see more of that wildlife, but they want to see it in its natural environment.
Yeah.
They don't want to see it. There was an age when people they'd bring captured animals up to Westerners to see. Because they like to see these. But it's we want to see these, but not like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. We've probably got a little bit heavy. I don't know, but I see a conversation. Not where I thought we were going, but it's all good. That's what I like. So a couple of things that I had in mind. One was to talk about photography at some point, seeing as it is partly photographers anyway, but also just, is there anywhere you've been that absolutely blew you away when you got there that was sort of much more than you were expecting?
Yes. So for me, it is the Himalayas, and I probably think Bhutan.
Okay.
And that is so. I'm as well as so there. So for your audience who maybe don't know, my dad is he's seen as was a world leader in mountaineering, and he actually started life as a photojournalist as well. So the very hard technical mountaineering, that's his bag. That's not my bag. I love the high and wild places, but I love everything. I love I've always been very much into my nature, into culture, and all of that. My auntie Angie used to take me bird watching when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated by culture and spirituality and those things as well. So Bhutan, I see as being, I never got to go to Nepal. When my dad first went to Nepal in 1960, everybody was wearing traditional clothing. There was only one road out of Kathmandu, and everybody's living very traditional lives. And now Bhutan, and a lot of Nepal has lost that.
Yeah.
But Bhutan, because of a very forward-thinking king, it was still a closed country after Nepal had opened its borders. But the king knew the inevitable was coming. He's very affectionately known as King Five, and because he was the fifth of his dynasty, and he, when they switched, he actually took them from a total monarchy to a constitutional monarchy, and that was he drove that. Wow. So this total monarch drove that, which is quite unusual to happen. And he came up with and helped them with their constitution and all this kind of stuff. And he's got in there. So in Bhutan, every single government employee, whether you are the prime minister or whether you are a street sweeper, you have to wear traditional clothing.
Okay.
So everybody, whether you're a teacher, if you're in any kind of government position, postman, whatever, if you're in a government position, you have to wear traditional. So they're really keeping that away. And because of that, because that's, kind of a third of the population, that's everybody else just does as well. Yeah. And so they all do. And then he kept other laws. So I think it's at any one time they have to maintain X percent of tree cover, because he'd seen what had been happening with the landslides and the denigration of the forests through Nepal and Sikkim and all those countries beside them as well. Their whole thing about gross national happiness is true. It doesn't quite work the way that people think it does. Yeah. It is actually a measured statistic that they use to do it, but they measure off gross national happiness rather than their GDP, which is brilliant. And that country is just, and the other thing as well, they've done this thing that if you go into Nepal, it is, that there are a lot of, since the 60s when the hippies, itinerant hippies were going there. There's nothing wrong with itinerant hippies, but it's always had people going there for on the cheap, people staying, people ripping off the locals, some of the locals ripping them off in return, and all of that kind of stuff that you get in third world countries and third world environments. You don't get that in Bhutan, because in Bhutan, you basically have to pay a tax just to be there. So it's come down a bit. It used to be very, very expensive. I think it used to be $350 a day.
Wow.
I think now it's either $250 or $150.
Wow.
But that means that everybody who goes there, then they're not going to drop rubbish. Yeah. They're not going to they're going to treat the place. Yeah. They've just handled it really well, so that the country is beautiful, the trail's beautiful, and I saw a thing the other day saying, that some country was going to be the first to ban smoking, but they're putting it off. I can't remember which country it was. That's not true, because Bhutan already banned smoking. Bhutan's been illegal to buy cigarettes for years.
Yeah. Wow.
It's great. Anyway, so that Bhutan blew me away, as much for its strength of cultural identity, and it is the most amazing Himalayan kingdom. When you go and see, there's the famous temple, the Eagle's Nest, which really is an eagle's nest. It is absolutely stunning. It is absolutely beautiful. And when you're walking there, because unlike Nepal, where I did a trek, I led a trek out there called the Lea Lingshi trek, and the whole way round, we didn't meet one other group.
Wow.
It was just we were traveling in one direction, and there was nobody else. And we bumped into one of the royal family who was going. They were going around every few years. One of them will go around and just visit all the villages in the kingdom, and just to say hello and see the people.
Oh, that's fantastic.
What cool
great.
people!
That's fantastic.
cool. Yeah. So we met the princess. I can't remember her name now. It was years ago, but it was that was an amazing trip. And at the same time, it was also one of the most harrowing. I nearly lost a client. I had the closest I'd ever come to actually seriously losing a client from altitude mountain sickness. Right. So we had a client very, very nearly die on us, and we, with some quick thinking of me and my mate Bill, who often comes with me as my expedition doctor, we managed to save this girl. But yeah, it was a brilliant trip.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Actually, on that, I suppose, just as a footnote, maybe say something about altitude and the kind. If anyone is thinking about doing anything at altitude, what they should really bear in mind. What sort of preparation. That what's known about altitude sickness as well, which is a tricky subject.
Yeah. I've just got to say, I forgot one other thing that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Was in 2000, I got to stand on top of an unclimbed peak. So me and my dad went and did a climb, and just standing somewhere where nobody has stood before. Wow. That was absolutely mind blowing. So from an experiential point of view, of just there being in that moment. Yeah. That was a very, very, very special thing to do. So that was in the Kanchenjunga region of Nepal. But yeah, getting onto altitude. If you do have people going to altitude, look, it's actually really, really simple. If you stick to the rules, there's some hard and fast rules. The downside is if people are going on organised groups, a lot of the organised groups in popular areas, they've designed the itineraries to fit in with the Western holiday, 2-week holiday, not to fit in with the levels of altitude that you're having to climb. Yeah. So generally speaking, if you're going to altitude, you want to climb or sleep no higher than 500 meters than you did the night before. Right. Okay. So you can go higher than that, but your sleeping point must be no higher than 500
So it's sort of
meters.
Climb high, sleep low.
Yeah. And so the no higher than 500 meters higher. And then for every 1,000 to 1,500 meters that you travel in ascent, you must take an acclimatization day. Right. Now, an acclimatization day isn't necessarily a rest day. That is 2 nights where you sleep at the same height. Yeah. So you might go for a walk that day and go higher, but you must come back down and sleep where you slept.
And at what altitude does this kind of kick in? What's the
from around? If you've had no prior history of altitude mountain sickness, then we tend to take things from around 2,800 meters. Yeah. So if you're considered to be at low risk if you haven't had any problems with altitude before, you stick to those rules. You're considered low risk. Medium risk is when you're starting to break those rules. If you've either had problems at altitude before, or whether you're breaking any of those rules. And then if and you're high risk, if you ascend say to 3,500 meters in one day, if you do 1,000 meters in a day, if you've got a history of HACE or HAPE, which is severe versions of altitude mountain sickness, then you're looking at it. Or the rapid ascents, they call it on Kilimanjaro, which you did. There's a couple of routes that they call the Coca-Cola routes that are only 3 or so days. That is asking for trouble.
Yeah, that's very risky.
That really is asking for trouble. So those are the absolute basics. The other rule is that basically, so fitness doesn't protect you from altitude sickness, but what it does, there's a rule about exerting yourself at altitude. So the more you exert yourself at altitude, the more chance of getting symptoms of AMS. Okay. So the idea, the fitter you can get yourself, but then you go travel really, really slowly. So it's like get fit, but travel like you're unfit.
Yeah.
Then you'll do really, really well because you're exerting yourself less. The trouble is, what happens is people get fit and then they think they're King Kong, and then they'll break one of those rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they go, oh no, I'm going fine, Joe. No, I'm fine. But I'll go steaming ahead. I want to get into Camp first, you went leading a bunch of blokes and testosterone takes over. Oh God! and then the next thing, you're having to call helicopters to take people down the mountain, and
it's the old person who's just going really steady, who just keeps going.
Well, so I learned this from my dad. So it was really funny watching that. The first time I ever really took notice of how my dad approaches altitude. So he would just literally he'd be at the back, but he'd just keep going at a steady pace. You'd have all these people running around and all that, but by the end of the day he'd probably be at the front and he hasn't got any faster. Yeah. Just everybody else is buggered and feeling the altitude.
Yeah.
And then, and he doesn't actually really stop for very long. He just goes very, very slowly, but very, very constantly.
Yeah.
And when I lead treks, I always lead from the back, and I always say to people, if you want to go well, stick with me, and I'll be there with a first aid kit, and I'll be there at the back, because that's also technical, because it's a lot easier if somebody gets into trouble up ahead. Somebody will run up and tell me, and I'll get to them. Yeah. But if you're up the front and somebody gets sick behind you, you don't know. Yeah. And somebody's got to come and get you, and then you've got to get back, and all that. So it's always better as a mountain lead always to lead the rear. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So but they're the basic. Then the other thing is with altitude is NSAIDs can really, really help. So just having Nurofen and paracetamol. And taking those if you start getting a headache, it could be just because you're dehydrated. Yeah. Slug 500 mils of water. Yeah. Drink that. Wait half an hour. Does it feel better or not? If it doesn't get better, then you need to take an NSAID, and you need to actually admit to yourself, when in doubt, think that you've got mild AMS. Yeah. If you do have if you've got a mild headache and it's just a headache, we use a thing called the Lake Louise score sheet. And I've actually I can make available to you guys. I actually have a guide to altitude illness. Okay. At the moment, I'm actually giving away for free on my website.
I'll put a link to your website in the description so people can link directly to you.
Oh, brilliant. And then I have in the back of that as well, I have a thing called the Lake Louise score sheet. And it came from a meeting of altitude medicine doctors back at Lake Louise, which is at Tahoe, years ago. And they came up with this system. It's actually very good. So mine's a modified system of that. And it's basically, you've got points, a whole series of points. And if you score more than 3 points, well, then you've got mild AMS, and you need to address it. You need to either stay where you are and then see if it settles overnight. So stay where you are. Do not go any higher. Yep. If you've got severe AMS, if you've got, let's say, 5 points, etc., or if somebody has to fill it in for you because you can't, then you've got to go down. You've got to go down 500 meters. Yeah. You go back down to where you last slept, or at a level that's the same as when you last slept, or lower, depending on how severe it is.
Yeah. That's brilliant. I thought just to finish, just have a quick chat about photography, and I know we were chatting about your kind of evolving what you're doing with that, but maybe just tell us what you're doing and what you shoot and what
Yeah,
you
well,
use.
I have I've had a YouTube channel for years, but I haven't done anything with it. My focus has been on, when I had the gym, I was just throwing things up on Facebook and stuff like that, and I never really saw it as a tool. So I'm now actually really focusing on both documenting my travels and my adventures and any tips and advice that come out of those. And then also, especially, one of my areas of expertise is around the whole altitude piece, and helping people prepare for altitude. So tips and stuff around that. And so I've just been on this massive learning journey. It's funny because my dad started before he was making money from his climbing, from books and sponsorship and all that. He was a photojournalist. He used to work for the Telegraph. They got sent off to do pieces with. They sent him off to live with the Inuits and the Eskimos for 5 months. Wow. They sent him to live with the Hunza people in Pakistan and all those. And they sent him off on an expedition down the Blue Nile, where he the only time he's ever fired a shot in anger from a service revolver. So Dad had this background in photography, and so we've always grown up with cameras, and we had a dark room at home and all this. But I hadn't really gone down that route. And my mum was a very, very keen photographer as well, and she was a wildlife photographer, mainly taking English wildlife, squirrels, birds, badgers, and local countryside wildlife. And then now all of a sudden I've found myself. Now I'm not doing stills photography. I'm doing lots of videography, but I'm having to learn now about composition. And I've gone and I'm suddenly spending money on mirrorless cameras and microphones and lighting and gimbals and all of this. I've got this this massive learning curve. So I just did this Mustang trip was my first trip as a content creator as opposed to a trek leader, and it was great, but I made a lot of mistakes. And there was loads of times where I'd missed shots and missed scenes or done stuff, and then realised I should have taken a load of B-roll around that. I don't know if you guys know what B-roll is.
If you explain for those who aren't into.
So the B-roll is and the cutaways are like that is maybe the picture of my feet walking and a picture of a child sitting in a doorway, or the picture of somebody stirring a pot of food and all of that. And then the A-roll is, me talking to camera or explaining something, etc. So, and because mine is very much around, I'm doing two kinds. One was a vlog of the journey. So it's kind of diarised and conversations and observations between me and my mate, Bill. Mm-hmm. And then the other half were standalone pieces, like we did a whole night on Nepalese Tibetan cooking, and we did another night which was just another session about. I ended up with a really bad back after the flights, and so I did a whole thing about a stretching routine. Okay, so they're standalone pieces, and then the rest is a vlog. And then we did a load around. So Bill, who's my mate, he's always my expedition doctor on trips that I do. He's an anaesthetist. He's English originally, but now based in Brisbane for the last 40-odd years. And so me and him talking about medical concerns. Yeah. So everything from altitude to managing small injuries, managing dehydration, managing cuts, sores, all of this kind of stuff. Antibiotics, when you shouldn't take drugs, all of this. Yeah. But none of this is medical advice.
No, of course.
Please consult your doctor first.
Absolutely.
So we did stuff like that, and so I did a lot of learning around that. I like one thing in particular. Is I'd been told on a video course that I'd been part of, saying always check your audio first, and I did the first few times, and then I stopped checking it, and I didn't realise so my microphone had a dead cat on it. So for those who don't, the dead cats to stop the wind, and I'd actually bought the wrong dead cat for the microphone, so I kind of hodgepodged it, and I didn't realise that when I was standing in a certain way, it was still getting that.
The wind
so
noise.
I've got a load of sound that I can never get back.
Yeah.
I can never, and so I'm now trying to work out, do I just live with it? Do I just not put the whole of those scenes in, or do I just edit that kind of stuff in? So so doing that and then not leaving enough, learning about leaving decent amount of space after end of scenes for the editing process and all of that kind of stuff. But it's a great journey, though. I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah,
I mean, my edits are appalling. I don't care. I'll learn. I'm just looking at this. The first 100 videos that I put up are a learning experience for the next 100.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Before we finish, Joe, is there any final advice or any final words for anybody who's thinking about doing a trip, particularly to altitude or visiting mountains or even more remote places? Any just final thoughts that you'd like to suggest?
Just get yourself fit. Nobody ever went anywhere and said, "Oh God, I was too fit for that." Oh, yeah. I wish I hadn't got as fit. Because that really does affect, and that's whether you're, say, doing a wildlife photography thing in Africa, or and even if you're doing things from the back of a Range Rover, etc. The fitter you feel, the healthier you feel, the more energy you have, the more cognitive function you have for the things that you're participating in. So get yourself fit. I have a process that I put people through. So there's the three main parts, the three pillars are intention, identification, and implementation. So we have with our intention, so that is, what is your goal? Why are you doing it? What is your level of ability compared to the level of ability that you need, both technical and physical? So in your viewer's place, that's okay. Do I need to be fit for this? What's the physical ability I need? But also technical ability. What could I learn before I go on this photography trip or whatever that will help with that? And how long will it take me to acquire those skills? Okay,
yeah, exactly.
And then that wraps up into the planning. So that is, okay, so what is the plan? How am I going to create a timeline for this? Okay, so it's the outline of the plan. So that's the first part, intention. And as you can see, that's very future focused. The next is identification. And this is the key. If we've got a goal, if we don't know where we're at now in comparison to that goal, we're lost. Okay, so we don't know. So with identification, if we look at our body, so that is our general health.
Yeah. So
not this isn't talking about being buff and having big guns and a six pack and all that, but our general health for the trip we're doing. Yeah, let's step back from that. I really don't care what you look like in your swimwear. That is not, it's got no interest and no bearing on anything. The aesthetics of it, we're going on an adventure or you're going on a wildlife shoot. you're not going on you're not in a beauty contest, okay? So, but where body composition does matter is a better body composition going to help whatever it is you're looking to do? Is it going to help you with your performance? So if you're going to altitude and if you're climbing hills, probably, okay? So then, if you are carrying a few extra kilos of pudding, well, then, we need to look at, how can we get you more functional before you trip? Then also your biomechanics. So how are you moving? Are you moving well? Are you not moving well? How are you going to, I get some lower back issues, etc. So which after making a bad decision of taking an extended flight to get to Nepal this time, I ended up suffering with some bad back issues. So how can we manage those? What are our movement patterns like? And then the last one is of identification is mindset. So it's really looking at as I call character. Are we going into a place that is stressful situations? How do we handle stress? What are our triggers? Are we on an expedition with other people? If we are on an expedition with other people or on a trip with other people, what are the things that set us off? What are the things that we know that we don't respond well to? And how are we going to respond if those things occur whilst we're cold, we're tired, we haven't got into camp, something happened to the food that day, the porter with the food got sick and things aren't set up, you're knackered, and all that. So how do you deal with that? What is your plan around that? And then how can we make ourselves more resilient and a better team player? So because even if we're going on trips by ourselves, we're not really. 9 times out of 10, we have people in support. We have people helping. They are our team.
Yeah.
Guess what? Might be a commercial entity. We might be paying them. Doesn't matter. We have to treat them like team members. We have to treat them like brothers, not servants.
Exactly.
And then how can we all work together to get an awesome outcome, us all traveling in the same direction? And then the last part is the implementation. So that's very present focused. So how can we, the last part, the implementation, that's the bit on how we get from our future focus, from our present focus to our future focus. So that is the creation of a plan, of a program to get there. That is the discipline and the daily work of improving our abilities, improving our skills, improving our fitness, improving our mindset. And then we've got the final part. We've actually got the perform. So that's the actual trip itself, the event itself, going on that trip, preparing for it. Have we got everything? Got our checklist sorted out, visas, all of that kind of stuff. And then the actual event itself, and if it's for some of my people, that might be their trip nutrition, their race day nutrition, if they're doing, say, a multi-day race or stuff like that, and getting all that stuff planned out. And then the last bit, which everybody forgets, is a debrief at the end, the celebration.
Yeah.
So having achieved what you've achieved, but then also, this is whether you're doing a photography trip like yours or climbing a mountain, is actually going through, giving yourself a little debrief. I use a process called an EDDI process, where you look at everything. Well, what worked well? What didn't work well? What do we need to do better in the future? So mine's EDI. So that's what's excellent and effective. That's the E. D is what needs to be developed or danger.
Yeah.
And ideas coming from the E and the D.
Right.
So. Yeah, so I do that. I do EDDI Pro. I call it an EDDI process, and I do EDDI processes all the time. I do them for my big trips. I do them daily. I do them if I'm doing a sales call to a new client. Afterwards I'll do the EDDI process on it. What went well, what didn't. All that kind of stuff. So, but that's great. Debriefing, which is a tip I got from a mate of mine who's a a fighter jet pilot, and they're massive on the debrief in the Royal Air Force. And he put me on to doing really, really good debriefs and debriefing all the time. And I found it really helps a lot.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
So that's my tip. That's our system.
No, they're great. That's great. Joe, I know we could chat for hours, but I've really enjoyed it. No, it's fantastic. No, I really enjoyed it. And for anyone listening who wants to know more about Joe and what he's doing, there is a link by the time you listen to this on the description for the podcast, so you can go directly to Joe's website and find out more, or you can always drop me an email and I'll connect. Do you want to shout?
And get on, go on to my YouTube channel.
Yeah,
so it's just Joe's Bait Camp, and get on there. Make sure you like and subscribe, and hit that bell.
Excellent. All right, thanks, Joe. And
really good to talk to you, Graham. Really good to catch up with you.
Yeah, really good to talk to you too. Okay, I'll hopefully talk soon.
Cheers.
Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.